I'll also mention the Shav and Aliyah. I'm also going to sponsor Shir Lulu Nishmat, my Elter Zeta ben Sion ben Menachem Halevi, who Shav and Aliyah. All right, my Elter Zeta who made Aliyah in 1952. You want to put something in also? Give me. Mayor Ben Rabbi Chil Natan HaKohen Sham Shav and Aliyah. So we have a lot of sponsorships for one shir, Baruch Hashem, but it's good. So that's what it should be. So the learning should be, we say, is good for their neshama. We're learning now the mitzvahs that we do should be, in this shir of Talmud Torah should be merit for those who have passed from this world and the Alma the Kush in the world of truth. And we will access now from the Torah HaKadosha, which comes from Shemayim to Aretz. We go back to the Mishnah. We're grounding ourselves once again in Limud HaTorah Chav Vav Amud Aleph. With thanks to everyone for their patience for last week. The week just got away from me. When did the crisis hit? 5:30 on Monday. I'm in a hospital. What am I going to do? So by the time the whole thing finished, too late. And then Tuesday was another thing. Didn't work. Chav Vav Amud Aleph in the Mishnah. We're now entering a new section of Masechet Rosh Hashanah, even though it's in the middle of Perek Gimel already, because we started already before. And that is, we're talking about Rosh Hashanah and the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah. The main one of them, of course, is shofar. Kol ha-shofarot ksherim, chutz mishal para, mipnei shehu karen. This would have been perfect for last week's shir on the heels of Parshat Ki Tisa. Okay, it's meant to be then. So all shofarot are kosher, except not one from a cow. I mean, from a bull, really, because that's not really a shofar. That's called a karen. That's a horn. That's a horn. Now, I think everybody here knows, I just already spilled the beans. I mentioned Parshat Ki Tisa. Everyone knows a particular Dvar Torah about why you wouldn't use a horn from a bull, right? Which the Gemara will get to. But if you look at the Mishnah has not given us that rationale. So whatever we think about it and we know about it, it's actually not necessarily accurate to what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah just tells you, according to the Chachamim, that anyone would work. Rashi here, Ben shel ayel, ben shel yael, whether it's of a ram or of an ibex, either of those, but not of a para, because it's not really a shofar. It's really called a karen. Back in the Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Yossi, v'alo kol shofarot nikru karen shenemar bimshoch bekaren hayovel. This aspect of a pasuk, which is from Sefer Yoshua, tells us that the karen sounds like it's a stand-in for the word shofar. It's the same thing. Now, if you actually look up the pasuk, the full pasuk in Sefer Yoshua, it makes plain why this pasuk is such a perfect one to make Rabbi Yossi's point. That pasuk, which I have in my Torah Or HaShalem in my Gemara, Vayabim shoch b'keren hayovel keshama achem et kol hashofar Yariu chol ha'am tru'a gedola v'nafla chomati yertachtea ve'alu ha'am ish negdo. From Perek Vav in Sefer Yeshua, as the walls were coming tumbling down in Yericho, the same pasuk says, and as the sound of the keren is of jubilee is being sounded. Now it's not literally the jubilee year, but a jubilee meaning here freedom, because the walls are going to come down. When you hear the sound of that sound, which is a kol shofar, the pasuk says so. So then everyone should make noise on their shofarot, the sound of a trua gedola, and that's going to, as they're going around, it's going to cause the walls to come down. So keren, bimshoch bekeren hayovel, same pasuk says kol shofar, sounds like they're synonymous. Rabbi Yossi says, why can't you use anything you want? Everything is called a keren. Rabbi Yossi, by the way, may agree with another rationale for why you can't use the shofar of a para, but he doesn't think it's because Mishal Para is called a karen, because you see that the word karen and the word shofar are interchangeable. One of the things that really dominates this Gemara from here to the next Mishnah, and you'll see examples if we get that far tonight, is what do words mean? And depending on the context and depending on who knows about various words, they may have a different meaning at a different place. We're going to see some examples later on. If you look at Rashi on the Mishnah, we have already the idea here of the Mishnah. I read the first Mishnah, the first Rashi. Second, Shehu Karen, Einu Karui Shofar. This is the Chachamim talking. That's not a shofar. V'gabi Yom Kippurim, Shofar ktiv. If you look in the Torah in Parshat Behar, ve'avarta shofar trua, or Perak Batra Gamrinan Rosh Hashanah miYovel. So on the Yom Kippur of Yovel, we blow shofar. Today we have a vestige of that, according to some. That's why we blow shofar at Ne'ilah. But when we will have Yovel again, there'll be a Tkiyat shofar, so says the Torah, on Yom Kippur of the year of Yovel. So there, in Parak Hey, the Torah uses the word sound the shofar, uses the word shofar, even though elsewhere, when the Torah wants to refer to Rosh Hashanah, calls it a Yom Trua. It doesn't say what instrument to use. It's called a Yom Trua. It doesn't say shofar. Where does the word shofar appear in the Torah? Rashi wants you to be aware it's in Parshat Bahar. And because it's in Parshat Bahar, and there it refers to it, we connect them. Gamrin and Rosh Hashanah Yovel, we learn about Rosh Hashanah using a shofar from the year of Yovel on Yom Kippur, where we blow a shofar. Bekeren HaYovel, V'Yovel, here, Dichru can Mefarish B'Gemara. We'll come to that shortly, what the word Yovel means according to Rabbi Yossi. George, you had a question, I feel like, a minute ago.
We do on Yom Kippur?
It'll be on Yom Kippur. The year of Yovel can be on Yom Kippur.
I'm actually on Yom Kippur.
But we don't, because it's Yom Tov and there's the Din of Shabbos and it's not really Yovel. Some say it's like a Zecher. The Reb Saadia Gaon has like a list, he has a list of 10 different reasons why we blow shofar Rosh Hashanah. So in addition to those reasons for Rosh Hashanah, the question then comes up, okay, so why are you blowing at the end of Yom Kippur? So maybe that's going to be the herald at the time when Yovel arrives, we're going to be blowing the shofar. Another one is to warn people that, that we're coming to the end of the fast and the gates of Shemayim are closing, v'chulei, v'chulei. But it might be a holdover from the time of Yovel. Therefore, we're not going to do it on Yom Kippur, we do it after. And of course, how much of a holdover could it be? We do the shofar every single year. If it really was a holdover, it would be every 50 years. But we don't. We don't actually have a count of Yovel. We have no idea when it is.
But we wouldn't blow it during Yom Kippur for the same gezerah that we don't blow it on Shabbos during Rosh Hashanah.
Exactly.
Because Yom Kippur is
Exactly.
Shabbat, Shabbat. Exactly.
That's true. That's true. If you look at Tosfot right here on the Mishnah, there's a Tosfot Chutz Mishal Para. Tosfot noted that it said you can't use a para, but what about the Re'em? Right? Ha the lo katoni nami chutz mishal re'em. Mishal re'em nami ikre karen dichtiv ve'karnei re'em karnav. Why did you use the example of a par? Why not say you can't use from re'em? A re'em is some kind of a very large animal with very, very large horns. Right? There are different theories about what animal it might have been. Maybe it will be in the future. But ve'karnei re'em karnav. Uchtiv u'mikarnei ramim initani. B'shema einam chalulim ve'einam ru'im shofar. Maybe those are not actually hollow, and therefore they couldn't be used for a shofar anyway, because they don't have anything to recommend that. Could be. And they couldn't use a shofar. That's why, even though the keren of the re'em is referenced in the Torah, not good enough to make the grade as something you have to be concerned about. But when we talk about a para, that one can be hollowed out or is hollowed out, has a cartilage in it, but it's basically hollowed out also. Same way like an ayil and a yael, but we don't use it for reasons having to do with the semantics of the term keren versus shofar. That's what we have in the Mishnah. Yeah, and Rabbi Yossi says, well, if it's about the word keren and not the word shofar, I'm telling you, every time it says keren, it really means shofar also. Yeah. Look at the next Tosfot. The next Tosfot, v'haya bimshoch bekeren yovel. That was the pasuk from Sefer Yeshua. Tema d'lamaiti kradi Yitzchak dichtiv basvach bekarnav. Remember, the ayil is stuck in the bramble in the bushes. Bekarnav. I referred to that ram's horn as a keren. So wouldn't that be a good proof that shofar equals keren? Right. V'alvagav the hokra mechayim the hachinami maitila begemara bechor shoro hadar lo v'karnei re'em karnav. And even though you could say, okay, but that pasuk refers to it while it's still alive, and that was the issue. The fact that the animal's still alive, you call it the Karen, but once it's dead and you cut off the horn, so then that thing that you cut off, that's called a shofar only when it's disconnected, but when it's still attached, it's called a Karen, because that's what you find also in the Gemara. Bechor shura hadar lo v'karnei re'im shekarnav. That's the expression also about the shore. In other words, the Gemara, the Tosfot here points out that when the re'im is, and when Yosef Atzadik, it's the tribes of Yosef, Bechor shura hadar lo v'karnei re'im karnav. Remember, Bahem Inagach, so that's because it's still attached to the animal. That's why it's called the Karen. As opposed to in the pasuk from Sefer Yoshua, where clearly they're talking about blowing something, and there it was called a Karen. Aha! And the same pasuk was called a shofar. So maybe Tosfot surmises Karen when it's still attached to the living animal, shofar when it's detached. Shofar. And it seems that the reason why we included this very pasuk from Sefer Yeshua, as I read to you the pasuk in full already from the Torah or Shalem, is that the same pasuk refers to when you hear the sound of the Karen blowing, you'll hear that means you're hearing the sound of the shofar, so then you blow trua on whatever instruments you're holding. So Karen and shofar in the same pasuk. That's why that's the pasuk used, not a pasuk about other times in the Tanakh that it created some kind of a parallel between a Karen and a shofar. So that's the basic gist of the Mishnah. It is pointed out also that there's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah on Daf Chet. The Gemara there expresses the idea that Adam Harishon, when he is seeing the day disappearing, the first day of creation, and it's going to be nightfall, and he's already committed the sin. He thinks the world's coming to an end, so he's davening. He davens all night long till the morning light. When the morning light comes, the Gemara says that he realized minhaga shel olam. So when minhaga shel olam, then he was makriv ashore. He was makriv ashore at that time. So the fact that the shore is already from the very beginning, there's something about this. We're going to come to it. Stay with me. In the Gemara, you're going to see an example of how this plays out. By the Rashba says the word shofar is lashon shoferet, like a tube, because it's hollow automatically. Yeah. So and maybe the Karen, again, we just saw in Tosfot, Karen is mechuberet. The shofar is disconnected. Okay, and when you look up that Gemara on Adam Harishon, it refers to the idea that he is makriv ashore. Just keep that in mind. Now you're going to see why that's relevant for what we're going to come to right now in the next portion of the Gemara. So yeah, please.
The link between Gil and ashore.
Yes, and para. Yeah,
For that reason.
the Gemara is getting there. That's the Dvar Torah everybody knows, right? We don't use from a cow because the cow reminds us. It's not a cow; it's really from an ox. We don't do that because it reminds us of the child of the shore, which is an egel, nescheta egel, and the famous expression that many of us know that is in this Gemara, which we'll come to in a few minutes. Okay, so that's just the basic, yeah. So, the Gemara, Shapar Kama Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara has to admit, Rabbi Yossi has a great point. He made a good point. It's the same thing for Rabbanan. Call Shofarot ikru shofar ikru Karen. Yeah. So they disagree. They think all the shofarot are going to be called a shofar, and they could also be called a Karen. The para, but from the para, Karen ikri, shofar lo ikri. But if you talk about the Karen of an ox, that can only be called a Karen. It's never called a shofar. Dichtiv bechor shura hadarlo v'karnei re'im karnav. So the notion of the shore and its Karen, its horns are like the horns of the re'im, and they think that's a split. Rabbi Yosef Malach, he'll disagree and he'll say the paranami ikri shofar. No, I'll find you an example where the para is also sometimes they use the expression shofar. Dichtiv, as the pasuk says in Sefer Tehillim, v'titav la'Hashem mishor par makrin mafris. Okay, so it is greater for Hashem to get the shore of the par, the ox of the ox, strange formulation. Shor and par, obviously two different words. The ox of the bull, something like that, right? Makrin, mafris, that it has the horn and it has the horn that spreads apart. So vatitav la Hashem mishor par. So the shor refers to the an animal that is an ox in the first 3 years of life up to year 3. When it hits year 3, it becomes known as a par. So when we talk about a shor, it means first year, second year, up to the third year. When it's year 3, it becomes a par. So why the double language shor par? Im shor lama par, vim par lama shor. What does it mean? It was better for Hashem than a shor par. It's redundant. If shor, why a par? And with par, why a shor? Ella my shor par, mi shofar. Rabbi Yossi says, she put a little smile on your face. Shor and par go together because when you crunch the two words together, shor par, that's shofar. It's alliterative. So it seems pretty obvious that the Chachamim don't like this because, come on, are you pushing two words together? Rabbanan, Kid Rav Matna, to Amar Rav Matna, my shor par, shu gadol kapar. When you say shor, well, my shor par, what is a shor par? It means a shor, it's not yet 3 years old, but it's so big, it's big like a par. Yeah. Ula has another idea. Ula, I'm going to go back on all these things, but let's just get down some of the basic pieces. Ula Amar, Hainu Tamid Rabbanan, Kid Rav Chizda. The idea of Rabbanan is like the notion that Rav Chizda has articulated. The Amar Rav Chizda, why can't the Kohen Gadol go into the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippurim wearing gold vestments? Lafisha in Kategor, Nasa Sanegor. Right? As the prosecution, gold cannot become the defense attorney. The Gemara recoils on this third idea, this last idea, and says, Vilo, va'ika dam par. But you're using the blood of a bull, and you're sprinkling the blood of a bull. A bull is a par. A par is the Abba of the Egel. So you're back to an Egel, and going in sprinkling it. So the Gemara says, Hoyel v'ishtane ishtane. It doesn't look like the par. It's not the same thing as the par. It's already the blood of the par. It's in a different form. That's not a problem of Ein Kateger Nas Senegor. It was transformed. So wait a minute. If the problem is the gold on his vestments, because it's the gold from the Egel Hazav, v'ha'ika arm v'kapor to kruv, the whole thing is gold inside. So the Gemara answers chote bal yakriv ka'amrinan. It means that the sinner shall not try to use an implement towards his kapara that is going to raise the specter of sin. But it's not that gold altogether is problematic. It's just he can't be doing something involving gold because that would be raising the specter. Ein kategor nasa senegor. So the Gemara says, really? Va'ika kafu machta. But he goes in with the ketoret. We learned this. Those who were with us for Yuma, carrying a long golden shovel. Yeah, remember? And a golden spoon. So that's the gold. So the Gemara refines it and says, chote bal yitna ka'amrinan. So it means that he is going to, he's not, the sinner should not have some personal enjoyment, i.e. in his person. His clothing should not be gold, but he's holding something that's part of the service, so it's like an appurtenance the same way the aron is gold, the kruvim are gold, so the kaf and the machta, it's part of the service, that's not a problem. But on his clothing, that we don't allow. The Torah doesn't allow it. The Torah talks about, remember, big day zav, big day love, and big day zav, it's changing back and forth. The Gemara says, wait a minute. Okay, if all this is true of Ha'ika big day zav mi bachutz, but he is wearing the big day zav mi bachutz, so isn't that still a problem? Nasa sanegor, inka tikkur nasa sanegor. So the Gemara says, mifnim ka'amrinan. So the only issue is going lifnai v'lifnim, because there, it's such a high level of kedusha that even a small, subtle issue where he's benefiting in even the smallest way from gold on his person, that will be a problem. So the Gemara says, okay, so shofar naim mi bachutz. Who? Right? The shofar is also outside. Don't bring the shofar to the Kodesh Kodashim. So the Gemara answers a beautiful idea, the subject of 1,000 drushes, maybe more. Kevidel zikaron who, since the purpose of blowing shofars for a zikaron lifnei Hashem, kibifnim dame. The sound of the shofar, it's as if even though you blow it outside of the Kodesh Kodashim, and it's outside of the Kodesh, you do it in shul. I mean, they did it in the Beit Mikdash, but on the grounds. But it's as if it's in the Kodesh Kodashim. Because it's such an inward sound. It's going so close to Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to Kiviyachol. It's lifnai v'lifnim. It's in the world of sound, it's lifnai v'lifnim. Therefore, Ein Katir Senegor is a problem. And we have to be concerned not to use something from an animal, that the actual implement of it is going to remind Hashem, so to speak, about the Chet Egel. En kateger not seniger, so you don't use from a par, you use from an ayil or a yael or some such thing. So these are the basic ideas. Yeah. So let's look at some Rashis here just to fill in the puzzle a little bit. And we'll get back to that cryptic Gemara that I referenced from Adam Harishon. So the Rashi here on the Gemara. Ikru Karen v'ikru Shor. Ikru Karen kidamaran. Right? It's called a Karen. We saw examples where it's called a Karen. Is the pasuk from Yeshua. V'ikru Shovar dichtiv b'matan Torah bimshoch hayovel. Right? It says with regard to Matan Torah, bimshoch hayovel. The expression is when the sound will keep going at the time that it will draw out, but it eventually finishes. The sentence says Hema Yalu Vahar. What does it say specifically there? Uchtivahi Kol Ha Shofar specifically. Yeah. So if you look at the Haggadah Bach right there, Haggadah Bach points out, right? Are we here? Yeah. Dibur Matchia Ikru Karen V'chulei Kol Shofar. Where are we here? Kol HaShofar. And then it goes to Asal Kadaita V'charkach. I'm trying to get it down. How it fits, because it goes into the next. Karen Ashkan the Ikrei Dichtiv V'karner Im Karnav Shel Bechor Shoro. I'm skipping the Bach. I'm not holding enough in the Bach. I thought I had it down pat, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. So we'll have to come back to it. I pause on that one. I usually do all the Bachs, but I did not look at this clearly enough before, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. Okay. The point is that the same way you had a pasuk bimshoch b'keren hayovel, we have bimshoch hayovel, the same expression in Matan Torah, and there it uses the expression vahi kol hashofar. So you see that you have a pasuk in Yeshua bimshoch b'keren hayovel, and then you have bimshoch hayovel hema yalu bahar, but the same area of the Torah refers to vahi kol hashofar. So you could have mishoch hayovel, could be called a keren, or it could be called a shofar. It's another example of where that comes up. The karnei re'im. Now the next Rashi. The karnei re'im karnav shebechor shoro keren ashkechan de ikre. Right. So we see on that expression that the horns of the shore are called karnayim. Right. So the Gemara points out. So keren, it's called a keren clearly. Then we have this pasuk that Rabbi Yossi quoted, "Batitav laHashem." Rashi fills in, "Batitav laHashem tefilati mishofar, uveshor kamishtai kra." Right. The way that the pasuk is formulated is, my prayer was greater to Hashem than having given the offering of an ox bull. But Rabbi Yossi read it homiletically of the shore par shofar. Now, at first blush, kind of makes you smile a little bit, like it's kind of a word game, shor and par, shofar. But if it turns out my tefillah is greater than a shor par, my tefillah, like in Sefer Hosea, unushalma parm sfatenu, our lips take the place of the bulls. They're the offerings now. So the idea that my prayer was greater even than an offering of a shor and a par, my prayer was greater than a shofar, which emanates from an animal. For Rabbi Yossi, that animal could even be a shor. Doesn't matter. Could be from a par. He doesn't think it's a problem. Right? Shor shehu par. That's what the Chachamim say. When it said shor par, it's shor shehu gadol kipar. Yeah? And the bet there points out shor shehu kipar, right? And then it quotes biyom shenikra shor haya gadol kipar. And the day that it was called a shor, it was already as big as a par. Zeu shor shel ma'aseh breshit. Shebiyom shenivra nivra bekomato v'shor ben yomo karui shor. The shor, at the moment that it's created, when it comes into existence on the day of creation, it is already called a shor. Shenemar, as it says, shor chesef oez upar hanikra ad ben shalosh. Right? The shor chesef oez is otoved beno. So the mitzvah otov beno, you can't shecht the mother and the child the same day. Right? So the shore, the shore and the kesef and the ez are mentioned all together. The shore is already at the moment that it's born. So the shore shupar. So then some of the commentators point out, I don't remember now who, but someone pointed this out, that that's the Gemara in Avodah Zarah points out that in the first day of creation, how was Adam Arishon able to already be makriv a shore? Because it already existed. It was built. It was created bekomato. On the day of Adam Arishon, there was already a shore. It existed. It was called that, even though it had just been created very recently. It wasn't 3 years old to be a par. So ein kategor, Rashi, zava egel v'shofar shopar, nami kategor de egelu. Right? Both of those things are considered prosecutorial. We don't want to mix one and the other. Hovi shtanu with regard to the blood, ligodam, vein marid hapar nikar. The vision of the sight of the bull is not noticeable. It's blood. The blood is the blood. In fact, you might remember in Masechet Yuma, we had a whole problem. What if the dam hapar and the dam of the seir get mixed up? Because they're pretty similar. Remember this? We had this discussion. What if we get mixed up? There's a problem. You have to shecht it again. You have to do the whole service again because everything had to be in a certain order. This is back from the days of Yuma, a long time ago. Okay. You can't give it because you're the one who actually sinned with it. So you can't now integrate it into the act of the kapara. When you're going in there into that place, you can't decorate yourself with it. Then Rashi here. Since the shofar is for the sake of remembrance, and we'll come to this Gemara, we'll see it inside, all right, but we're familiar with it. You blow the shofar, right? Malchiot lefanai, and then you're gonna kadei shetala zichronechem lefanai uvameh b'shofar. The shofar is gonna cause the zichronot to come before Hashem, and therefore the shofar is as if it's going inside. Shofar nami afagav the late be mishum chote bal yakri v'late be mishum chote bal yitnaeh kem del zikaron kaati ke big day kohen gadol shalifnim dami. It's like it's going inside. It's on a very high level, and you mustn't mess around to have something with it that is actually an object that could be associated in anyone's mind, certainly not to Hashem either, as being an element of remembering the sin. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Everyone with me so far? We're good? Okay. So, the Aruch Laner points out that in a forthcoming parsha that we will read, Badlein L'Tova after Pesach, we should all live and be well. We'll remember this to our Torah. Consider your Shabbos table, Parshat Shmini, so it's ready. That just reminds me that it actually describes that on the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, it specifically says that Aaron HaKohen is told to be makriv and egel. And the Zayin Miluim says so in the Torah. Parak Tet Pasuk Bet. There's our Kravat Egel and Zayin Miluim. So what about Kategor Nasis and Egor? He's literally bringing an egel. So what's that doing? So the answer, the Aruch Laner quotes, is I think he got it originally from the Marshad said this, and Aruch Laner was commenting on it. Was no, that's an avodat chutz. That's not going to lifnai v'lifnim. But the problem is it's still somewhat challenging because when it's not connected to kapara on a sin, okay, you can give this animal, this egel. But according to Rashi Udeimei, the whole point was to be mechaper on the cheta egel. To be mechaper on the cheta egel with an egel, davka, you're remembering the chet. I mean, it's right there. It's at the beginning of Parshat Shmini. So Aruch Laner answers that if it's davka in order to be mechaper in the cheta egel, then yes, you should bring the exact same item. That's the derech tshuva. That's what the Gemara in Yuma means. But ota isha, ota makom has to be the same parameters, and now you don't do the sin. The issue of ein kategor nasa sanegor, it's when you're not using that object itself to bring the kapara for something that you did, but you're using it to bring kapara generally, and it happens to also include this object, and I'd like to use this as part of the defense. That's where you get into ein kategor nasa sanegor. But if you're going to hit it headlong, you're going straight into the storm, right? So here, as Aruch Laner says, Aaron Cohen is told, Davka to be makriv of this. Davka is a kapara on the Chet Egel, because we're back with an Egel, and now there's no sin, but it was actually the ability to fulfill the same parameters without going down the road of a Chet. I thought of it almost as the idea that the interruption for Aaron Cohen, Archon doesn't say it, just thinking about it, is he says to the people tragically, Chag LaHashem Machar. But by the time they wake up the next morning, there's no Chag LaHashem. Instead, there's the Chet Egel. So the next go around, Vahi B'Yom Hashmini, they Davka do all get together in the daytime. Happens to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan. You can do the Torah also if you're with someone Wednesday night, Thursday. About Lena Latova. And what's the idea? Same thing. That Davka now, the same parameters, same situation, but the reality is now it's for the sake of doing tshuva. We have the Chag LaHashem for the sake of Hashem and not Chalil for something else. Yeah, come around to it again. So the day of Hakamat HaMishkan of Aleph Nisan becomes the day of the acceptance of the kapara at the highest level, because the Shechina is Shora again amongst Klal Yisrael. Yeah, which had been interrupted previously by the Chet Egel. Okay, good. So now, if you look at the, we can't do every single Tosfot here because I want to go a little farther in the Gemara. Look at just a beautiful little one-liner Tosfot. Kevin to Zikaron Ka'ati.
Oh yeah.
You see it? Yeah. So two Tosfotim actually. Chote Ba'itna Kamrina first before that, right? V'gabe shofar. What's the issue with the shofar? How are you yitna'eh? Mitna'eh nami v'kol tkiyato. You have some kind of a beautification that's happening through the sound of the tkiya. We're an accomplishment. We're blowing shofar with a loud and proud sound. So that's also chote ba'itna kamrina. We're worried, therefore, but it can take her not sneger, so don't make it out of a par.
Mina is like Hana.
Yeah,
Okay.
mitna'eh, yeah,
That's right.
like Zek Hilivan Veu. So he na'eh lefana b'mitzvah, beautification. So the shofar mitna'eh nami b'kol tkiyato, because the tkiya of the shofar sounds, if it sounds good, so it's inspirational, whatever it is, it's a nice sound, a strong sound. You're serving Hashem through that sound. It's a mitzvah. So that's chote ba'itna kamrina and aim tinger not snicker. Kevin l'zikaron ka'ati tema. Here's another question. What about the ephod and the choshen? Nam l'zikaron ka'atu. The Torah goes out of its way to tell you that even though the ephod and the choshen never go into the Kodesh Kodashim, right? Because he goes only in big day Lavan, but he's wearing them, and we say, oh, the shofar, even though it's outside, it's the zikaron, and therefore you can't blow shofar on a par because it's going to remind you of Chet Egel. How about the fact that the ephod and the choshen are made with gold? And they have gold, and the Torah says the zikaron lifnei Hashem. Remember, the ephod has the gemstones over here, but there's gold on it, and then there's a chain, and it's gold with the stones. So, and get the not saying it's zikaron. So the expression here is V'yishlomar da shvatim zikaron heim. It's about the shvatim. It's not the gold part. The zikaron there is the names of the shvatim dafka on the ephod, the kitfod ha'ephod, kitfod ephod, and on the gemstones. That's the zikaron. It's not the object of the ephod or the object of the choshen, and therefore
He's arguing basically that the gold is black now.
Essentially.
So,
yeah. Because otherwise you run into the problem. If the whole thing with the shofar is, well, it might be outside of the Kodesh Kodashim, but it's still lezikaron, so that's like kibifnim, but it says the guard to the ephod and the choshen, or zikaron, I don't know the exact lashon, but the Bali Kriya know it very well. Zikaron lifnei Hashem, right? Okay, so it's not the same zikaron. Why? Because that zikaron is on the names, not on the metals. It's a beautiful idea. Okay, now go back to the Gemara. We'll do a few more lines in the Gemara. The Gemara describes as follows. I am, let me not throw everybody off. Let me throw myself off. One second. It's Vahatana. So if you look at the Tosfot, Chote Ba'itna Ka'amrina, it's a little bit, it's 3-4 lines above it. The line in the Gemara starts who, with the word who. Keva the Zikaron who, Kil Bifnim Dame, period. Next. Vatana mipnei shekaren ka'amar chada, ve'od ka'amar chada. The ein kategor nasa senegor, right? So this Tana who said the problem is it's a Karen. So okay, so it's called a Karen, but it's also called a shofar. So what's the problem? All right. But what about Inka Tikkun Sneger? Oh, further, Mipnei Shu Karen. All right, it's also a Karen, has another name completely. Rabbi Yosef would answer, because he's the one who thinks, why can't you use from a para? The Ka'amart Inka Tikkun Sneger Hanamili Mibifnim. Vayishum Mibachutz. Who? Urika Amart Mipnei Shu Karen. Kol Shofarot Nami Ikru Karen. All right, so if you're going to tell me, Rabbi Yossi would say that he would answer the fact that you want to tell me in Ketikronasis and Egor, that's if you're bringing something inside the Kodesh Kodashim, but you know what? The shofar does not come into the Kodesh Kodashim. And you're going to say that it's really called a Karen, so all the other shofar also called a Karen. Like, I don't buy any of this. In other words, he thinks it's okay to use the Karen of a para outside. He doesn't think it's a problem. The Karen is really a shore, and there's no Inketirnas and Egor. It's really outside. He doesn't accept the idea that Kevin to Zikaron Kai Kirishnim Dame. Abai Amar, Hanu Tamad Rabbanan, Shofar Amrachmana, Vloshnaim, Ushlosh Shofarot. Vadapara Kevin to Kai, Gilde, Mitchazik Ishnaim, Ushlosh Shofarot. So Abaye says, no, so if you look at the Rabbanan, they say that when the Torah uses the expression shofar, it means it's an animal that has a horn on it that is one shofar. But if you know how it works on the para has multiple layers within it. If you apparently on a bull, when you take off the horn, it's a horn in a horn in a horn in a horn. It's like a babushka doll. Is it a babushka doll? It's a bunch of them, and you keep taking out the inner ones till you get the one you want. But on an aisle and a yael, it's just one. So they say, since it said shofar, not two and not three, so you can't do that. And since it's gildem, it's layers and layers, so mitchazik ishnaim shlosh shofarot. V'atan ipnei shu karen ka'amar chada, right? V'od ka'amar chada, the shofar echad, amar rachmana, v'loshnaim u'shlosha shofarot. Right? So the fact that it says, on account of the fact that it's a karen, you can't use it. What does it mean? Well, I'd say it only once. And then it says again, one time at the shofar. The point is, one and one is the issue. Can't have two or three shofarot. V'od mipnei shu karen. Okay. V'Rabbi Yossi, he answers, Amar lach, wide line. Kidaka amar, shofar echad amar rachmana, v'lo shnayim shlosh shofarot, kivin the mechabre adade chadhu. Yeah, okay, fine. It's two, it's three, but they're all attached to each other initially. So that's like it's really like one. He doesn't care. So there's layers inside. It's still called the Karen. It's still called the shofar. And the para is no different than anything else. Karen. And you want to tell me the problem is that it's called the Karen. Kol shofar nami ikru Karen. All shofar are called that. So my mashna, the hayuvla lishna the dachrahu. All right. The idea of the yovel is somehow about the notion here of the zachar. That's what's happening here. That's what yuvla refers to. The Tanya Amrabi Akiva Kshalach Ravya Hayukorin Lidachra Yuvla. So now we get into the semantics of when I went to such a place, I found out the name that they use for such and such a thing. It's weird. I went to Arabia, I heard they use that word, now I know what the word means. Amrabi Akiva Kshalach Lagalia Hayukorin Lanida Galmuda. My Galmuda, Gemula da Mibaila. They're called the Nida was called the Galmuda. What does it mean? It means she is separated, she is lonely, alone from her, or separated out from her husband. Gemula da mibaila. He did a lot of traveling, no? So hayukorin lama kasita. My nafkamina. The frushime kasita de oraita meya danki. Danki is apparently the same thing as ama'a. I don't know more than I'm reading here. I'm reading and translating, like, want to know what's meya kasita? When Yaakov Avinu buys Vayikon Chukata Sadeh, he buys it b'mea kesita. What is a kesita? It's a donkey, and the donkey is a ma'ah, mem ayin hey, a currency. So he went to Africa, I found out. Amar Rebbe, shalachti l'karche yam, hayu korin l'mechira kira. They called sales kira. L'may nafkamina, what difference does that make? L'frushit explain at the end of the Torah, at the end of Sefer Breshit rather than the Torah, ashakariti li. That which I purchased, which is regarding Marat Machpel, Yaakov Avinu says, Amar Rabbi Shimon Laki Shalachti Lidchum Kan Nashraya. Well, I went to the edge of the zone of the area called Kan, or that region called Kan Nishraya. Hayukorin Lekala Ninfe, Ulatar Nagol Sechvi. The kala was called the ninfe, and the tarnagol was called the sechvi. The kala ninfe mikra, yifei nof misos kol haaretz. We read it earlier today. All right? So yifei nof misos kol haaretz means the beauty of the bride, the joy of the whole world regarding Yerushalayim.
Nof and Ninfi are the same? Right, well.
Well, I'm just reading it like you are. Ulatana Gol Sachvi, Amarav Yehuda, Amarav, Vibait Emer Bishua ben Levi, Mikra Mishat Betuchot Chachma, Uminatan Sachvi Vina. Mishat Betuchot Chachma Elu Klayot. It means the kidneys, basically, somehow. They got some kind of wisdom. Or Mitan Sachvi Vina is the Tarnagol. Or who gives the wisdom to the Sachvi, that's Tarnagol. Yeah, by the way, translating the Sachvi, the Tur has this, and the Tur on Birchot HaShachar means the lave. The lave, the heart. I know in the Sachvi, but it's taken from this pasuk. So Levi ikulaho atra atagavlikam. He went to a certain place, Levi, and a man came over to him and Amarla kabe'an planya. So and so kavan. So lo aviyada my kamerle. He had no idea what the guy was talking about. Rashi already spills the beans. Kavan planya gazlani ploni. Someone so stole from me. He didn't know what it was. Sa'at Shal Beit Midrash comes to the base medrash. He says, "Does anyone know what this means?" So they said to him. They responded. Right? They said Amru lay. They said to him. It's not Amr, but Amr really. Gazlan. They stole. The person stole. Amar lach dichtiv hayikba adam elokim. And someone steal from God. V'gomer. Amar le Rava mi Barnish le Rav Ashi. Rava from Barnish said to Rav Ashi, Havai hatam, if I was there, Havamina le heichi kava'ach. V'mai kava'ach. V'amai kava'ach. V'meil havayadana yadina. If I was there and I didn't know what the word meant, I would have asked 3 questions. Where, how, and why? Well, with that word. And I would have figured it out from that. Okay. The same. V'yu savar milta the isura kamer like lava. So he didn't. He thought that it was. It was referring to. He's asking isur v'heter. It was really asking him a shaila in the world of choshen mishpat. I don't know. That's what it says. Lo haviyade rabbanan my sirugin. They didn't know what the word sirugin meant. Shamua la'amta de bei Rebbe. Rebbe had a maidservant who was not Jewish, who was apparently brilliant, and they heard her say the chaztinu rabbanan dehavu aile paske. They saw the rabbis were going in one group after the other, or one after the other. Amrlehu, she blurted out loud, Admatai tamnichlasim sirugim. Why do you keep coming in bunches, like like in waves? Sirugim means a split. You have Rashi quotes from the Gemara Megillah. Karas sirugim means you're reading a little bit, you skip, you read. Yeah. La v'yadi rabbanan my chaluglugot. They didn't know what that word meant. Simachat Shamula Amta the Bay Rabbi the Chazit Laho Gavra the Kamavade Parpachine Amrele Ad Mataya Tamafazer Chalug Logecha. They didn't know what a certain word meant. This word Chalug Logot. They saw there was a fellow who was throwing out Parpachine, some kind of a plant. He was throwing around. So she said to him, "Why are you spreading around and scattering your chaluglug?" So that's what it must be. It's that plant. They didn't know what that word meant. That's already a word in a pasuk. They didn't know what the word meant. A word in Mishlei. Salsala Tromamecha. So Yamachad Shamuel Amta the Bei Rabbi the Havad Amr Laho Gavra the Hava Kamahapech Besarei Amrulei Amatatam Salsa Besarecha. We know this from Rashi at the beginning of Parshat Vayeshev. Yeah, that same woman, this wise woman who was the maid in the home of Rebbe, saw a man who was playing with his hair. And she said to him, "Until when are you going to be misalsel in your hair?" Now they knew what it meant. Lo v'yada rabbanan my v'ta'atate b'ma'atata hashmeid. There'll be somehow it's a pasuk in Yeshaya. There'll be something that will cause destruction. But what is that something? The tatua. What is it? Yom chad shamul la'amta debei Rabbi the havad amr lechaverta shekule ta'atita v'tate beta. Bring the broom and sweep the house. They knew, something's going to come in sweeping. What are you learning here again and again? Well, let's finish. Lo hav rabbanan yadei my hashleich al Hashem yahavecha. You should push onto Hashem your burden. Yahavcha. Hashleich al Hashem Yahavcha. What does it mean? V'yichal kelecha. He'll sustain you. Amar Rabba Bar Chana. Yom echad hava azlina b'hadei ho taya da hava d'raina tuna v'amalei shkol yavich v'shadei agmaloi. So Rabbi Bar Chana, there was a lot of stories about him in Masachet Baba Batra that he met this peddler of some kind, this itinerant peddler of some sort who ends up possibly being Eliyahu Navi. It's a whole story. But he saw this fellow, this Arabian-looking traveler, and he saw the guy had a heavy burden, and that I was carrying a heavy burden. And he said to me, "Bring me Yahavich and put it on my camel." So the Chachamim understood, Hashleich al Hashem Yahavcha means put your burden on God. Don't carry yourself. Give it over to Hashem, and He will sustain you. Yeah. So that's the end of this Gemara. I wanted to speed through it because how much time were we going to spend figuring out the semantics of all these words? But look at that. The Chachamim did know certain words. And how did they figure out what the words meant? Go see what people say. Sometimes it wasn't even a Jewish person. Sometimes it was the common usage. Sometimes that was a way of figuring out what the word in the Tanakh meant. Sometimes something in the culture.
But was this maid Jewish or she wasn't?
I don't believe so. She was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But and she was very spiritual. We have the Gemara in Ketubot, and she intuited certain things. The Gemara in Ketubot about in the house of Rebbe toward the end of his life. It was fascinating. But you look at all the lessons you learned. It all has to do with how you're going to phrase the words. Anyway, that's all I have time for tonight in this Gemara. But next time we'll start again from another Mishnah. So we got to the next Mishnah. Ad kan.